All right. We are going to be looking at shifting from the 7 churches, as we finished that up last week. We then, from the 7 churches of Asia, as we tooled around Turkey, we then crossed over the Aegean Sea, or at least a small little part of it, over into Greece. And this as well, I talked about Laodicea being one of my favorites of the entire trip, and then I start going through all my stuff for tonight. We're going to be looking at Troas and Philippi and Neapolis, and I start looking at that and go, oh no, this was one of my favorite parts. It's hard to narrow it down, but again, I wanted to try to make this, I wanted to take you on the trip and not just show a slideshow of the trip. And so that's what I'm hoping to do through this tonight. So here's the journey, the second missionary journey of the Apostle Paul. Starting in Antioch. Of course, Jerusalem is going to be right down here. But starting in Antioch, the second missionary journey, they went north, and they went back to visit some of the cities that they had been to in the first missionary journey. In Antioch, Pisidia and Iconium up here, and then they started to head off across this way. Paul's goal, his intention, was to continue to move north. He wanted to go into what at that time they referred to as Asia. This is Asia Minor, and he wanted to go north. And that was not exactly what God's plan was for him. And so in Acts chapter 16, in verse 6, it tells us, it says that they passed through the Phrygian and Galatian region, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. And after they came to Mysia, they were trying to go into Bithynia. So let me back up. So this region here is Mysia. Bithynia is up here to the north. And so that's where they were trying to get up into, was into Bithynia. And the Spirit of Jesus did not permit them. And passing by Mysia, they came down to Troas. And a vision appeared to Paul in the night. A man of Macedonia was standing and appealing to him and saying, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." When he had seen the vision, immediately we sought to go into Macedonia, concluding that Paul had called us to preach the gospel to them. And so we find the Apostle Paul in Troas. I want you to notice the language. When we studied the book of Acts, we looked at this a little closer. But notice in what person this is being written. Luke is writing this, but he's writing it in first person. If you back up just a few verses, like the beginning of chapter 16, you'll see that Luke is writing, they did this and they went there. And so as they got closer to Troas, all of a sudden, Luke begins writing in the first person, we, as though he is with them now. And so we know at this certain point in chapter 16 that Luke, the physician, the doctor Luke, has joined them on this trip. So they have this vision. Paul has this vision of a man, a Macedonian, who appears to him saying, "Come over here." Now, if you go back to the map, it's not very far. Here is where Paul is in Troas, and Macedonia technically is even right here. That's right where we crossed when we went over. Up here is Istanbul or Constantinople, but Paul would have taken a ship that would have gone across the Aegean Sea over here in this direction into Macedonia. And so before we head over to Macedonia, we stopped in at the site of Troas. There's not a lot there. There has not been a lot of excavation. There was a lot of current excavation going on. But this is just a sign that was up when we pulled up of what they have found and what they have kind of reconstructed of what it was probably like It was a temple that they found. It was very large. It was about 70 by 50 foot, so that's a pretty big structure. And then there was a fountain of some kind that was built, probably in the name of some emperor or something. That's what this is, and it's about 25 or 30 feet by 25 or 30 feet in dimension, and that whatever this was in the center, they believe was built up fairly high as a fountain that would have had water flowing through it. There were all kinds of small artifacts like this laying around in different places. You can see that would have been some of the pillars that originally were there as a part of that temple that had collapsed, and there were several of these laying all around the place as well. There's a few places. And say you go to these lands where that they're spoken of in the Bible, and there's places as you're walking around that your guide will be like, there's a good chance that the Apostle Paul was right here in this spot, but you don't really know for sure. And then you've come to a place like this, and without a doubt, this road, as you can see, they haven't excavated a lot of it. They found it, but there's a lot left to be excavated. This road would have gone on out. You can barely see. That's the sea. That's the Aegean Sea out there in the background. And this road would have gone all the way out to the port. And so we know without a doubt, because this was the road, that Paul would have walked on this road as he was going down to find a ship at the port to take that ship from Troas over to Macedonia. And so it's kind of a neat place. There's another one like that that's coming up here in just a little bit. It's very similar to just that feeling that you get when you're in one of those places. This is standing at Troas. You can see part of the city wall that has been partially uncovered. That probably another 15, 20 feet deep to get down to the bottom of that wall. But you can see the Aegean Sea out here, some island that is out there as well. You go to Acts 16 verse 11 then, it says, "So, putting out to sea from Troas, we ran a straight course to Samothrace, and on the day following to Neapolis." I'll show you, Samothrace is an island, and I'll show you from a distance that island in just a minute. So taking that straight course from Troas, Samothrace is an island that sits right here just off the coast of Greece, just outside of Neapolis. One of the very first places we stopped in Neapolis, there was a Byzantine or a Greek Orthodox church, big building, but out in front, outside, was this mural. And what they have done is it's in memory of the Apostle Paul. So this is the Apostle Paul while he's in Troas. You can't see it, but up there labeling this city is the city of Troas. And so while Paul is there, he has a dream of a Macedonian. And those are the clothing and everything is very Macedonian. They made it very specific so that you can tell what that person's supposed to be. Saying, "Come over to Macedonia," which is Greece today. And then the very next part of it, Paul's getting off the ship, setting foot onto the continent of Europe, Macedonia, for the very first time. And so that's what that mural, I thought that was pretty neat. This mural is probably about 8 feet tall, probably 12, 15 feet wide. It's very big. But it was really neat to kind of see how they portray that. And they do that, of course, the Eastern Orthodox, I know Catholics do this a lot too, where they commemorate events through a lot of artwork. This is in Neapolis. This is that city that Paul landed in. There's not a lot of the ancient city of Neapolis left to see, although this was hard to cover up. This was a Roman aqueduct that would have been in existence at the time, at least part of that. They believe that at least this lower section would have been there in the time of Paul. This upper section they think may be a little bit newer. Since there wasn't a whole lot of things to see, I took a few pictures of it. And then kind of from a distance, there's the city of Neapolis today, referred to as Kavala, Greece, today. And it's a beautiful city, a beautiful area. Standing up, there is a more modern dock and port where ships come in today. However, this is what they believe to be the ancient port. This would have been, they believe, the cove that the Apostle Paul would have landed in. You can't hardly see it here. I've got a close-up picture somewhere else. There's a wooden boat sitting over here, and one of the guys with us says, "Oh, we found Paul's boat," because it is rotting and falling apart, and it's been sitting there for a long time. But obviously it's not. But it was kind of neat to be able to see this little port area as an area that would have been the place where the Apostle Paul first landed in Europe. So that, and like I said, it was a hazy day. This is the Aegean Sea. In the distance, just over the horizon, you can see an island. That's the island of Samothrace. And so when the Bible says that they went on a straight course to Samothrace, and then the next day they came from Samothrace and just made the trip over here to Neapolis. So this is the description that it's giving in Acts chapter 16. The next verse says, "And from there to Philippi," or if you're Greek, and it's Philippi, which is a leading city of the district of Macedonia, a Roman colony, and we were staying in this city for some days. So there's a road that the Romans built. Of course, the Romans were known for their roads. And this is the Via Egnatia, which goes all the way across the country of Greece. This road, you did have to take a ship, obviously, to get from Italy. This is the heel of the boot of Italy. So you did have to take a ship to get over here. But this road, it was considered one full road. This road goes all the way to Rome. And so, but this road is one. You see, here's Neapolis, and there's Philippi, and that road is what connected these two places. You've heard this statement, "All roads lead to Rome." And a lot of people think that is referring to the city of Rome, and it's actually not. Because that saying actually did not even come into existence until Emperor Constantine made his capital city in Constantinople, or what is today Istanbul. And so this is in Istanbul, and this post was discovered, and that it was originally erected as the center of the Roman Empire when the capital city was in Constantinople and not Rome. And this post was where all roads led to. This is what was being referred to when they said all roads lead to Rome. That's what that post was put there for, as the center place of the empire where all roads lead to. And so it just kind of looks like a concrete post, but I'm taking the word of the guide that it wasn't just a concrete post put there a few years ago. So here's the Via Egnatia. This was another one of those moments, because here's a path. There is only one road that went between Neapolis, which you can barely see in the haze in the background. That's the city of Neapolis back there, looking to the east. Philippi is to my back. And so as we're walking along this trail, the Apostle Paul with Silas, with Timothy, with Luke, the four of them and whoever else was with them were walking on this very road. As a matter of fact, on these very stones. They have dated this road actually prior to the 1st century. So this would have been the road that was there in the first century. And it was one of those goosebump moments of walking down this road, just knowing, for certain that this is a location that they were at one point. When we got to Philippi, as we're walking toward the city, the first thing we encounter is a cemetery. And if you remember at Hierapolis, we went through a massive cemetery. It's very common on the outside of the city walls, city gates, was a lot of times the city cemetery. The guide, he pointed this out to us, and I think it was mainly because we were Americans. This is, I believe you pronounce it, a fasces. I think is how you pronounce this. It's a bundle of sticks that's wrapped usually in a leather binding, and sometimes it would have an axe with an axe head sticking out of it. I believe you pronounce it fasces. That's not the way it looks, but I think that's how you pronounce it. And the reason I think he brought this out to us as Americans is because this is all over American founding fathers type of things. This, and you probably don't even realize it. I'd never paid attention to it, never seen it, never thought anything about it. This symbol represents power, authority. It can sometimes represent war. The word fasces is the word that we actually get the word fascism from, where they are fighting against powers with their own power and might. And so our founding fathers found that to be something that made a lot of sense with what they were doing. This is a 1936 copper dime. And there's a fasces that is right in the center on the back. There's an olive branch that is representing peace, but then there's also this fasces that is representing power and might at the same time. This is the seal of the United States Senate. And look at the bottom. There's two of them that sit there at the bottom of the United States Senate. Probably never paid attention, but look at what Abraham Lincoln has both of his hands on. And as he's sitting there, that same emblem is there as well. It's something that's found all over the place, and there's many other places. Just you can look on the back of a $1 bill, and you'll see some of this there as well. A lot of those kinds of things. So, yes. 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 Yeah. In the House chamber, behind the seat of the Speaker of the House, you see that same image. Yep, it's there as well. So I don't know the biblical representation or point to be made here, but it was an interesting thing that I thought, just with the history of everything, it was interesting enough for me at least to think, let's point that out. When we got then just on the outside of Philippi, there happens to be a river there. If you keep reading in Acts chapter 16, we read about a river. And the Apostle Paul on the Lord's day, or on the Sabbath day, was looking for a place to worship, which tells us there wasn't a synagogue in Philippi, which means there would not have been enough Jews in the city of Philippi to organize a synagogue. And when there were not enough Jews to organize a synagogue, I can't remember, there had to be 6 or 8 Jewish families or something within the area to be able to actually officially start a synagogue. Many times they were known to go and worship and meet at the rivers. And so Paul, assuming that Sabbath day to go and worship with some Jews, if I go down to the river, probably find some Jews. This is the river. So this is the river that the Apostle Paul would have met Lydia and the other women that they found at the river on the outside of Philippi, and he taught them the gospel, and they were baptized in this river. Was it in this location? We have no idea. However, over time, of course, the Greek Orthodox again, there is a church building that is back to the back. I've got some pictures of here in just a moment. But they have made a channel to kind of divert some water out of the river into a baptistry that they say is used very often. One of our guide said that there are many times when he is here that there are churches in the area that are bringing people to this location to be baptized. And so nothing more significant in being baptized in a place like this than being baptized anywhere else. But it was kind of a neat place. And that's what we took some time to kind of just have our own private devotional type of thing. And somebody snapped a picture of me and Jenny there on the bank of the river while we were spending some of that time. It was also, we were there on Sunday morning, and so we had our worship, which was kind of a cool thing to have worship on the river bank of the river outside of Philippi on the first day of the week. And that's Sage Bridges, I believe his name, who gave a lesson there for us that day. But that's one of those moments that I'll never forget. This is that Greek Orthodox church building that was built, and I'm not intending anything to trigger anything, Pete, because I know there's Greek Orthodox are very similar to Catholic traditions. But there was a lot of just the artwork and things that were amazing, and I've got hundreds of pictures of this, and I'm only sharing a couple. Of course, this is Mary and Jesus. That's supposed to be the John the Baptist. But when you step inside, the entire place, the entire ceiling is covered in these paintings. And what they have done is they've gone through the entire life of Christ, from his birth all the way through every event that the Gospels record, and they have painted every single one of those scenes, and it's amazing to see what they have done with that. But the most impressive thing to me that I thought was cool was the floor. Again, it's a mosaic that was done, and what this is a map, and I'm looking at it upside down, but is a map of the Apostle Paul's second missionary journey. And so I flip it around here so you can see some of these. It started over at Antioch, and then this is the path, actually his first and second missionary journey, so you can see where they even diverted the journeys. This is, you read what that is? Ephesus, yeah. Then you've got Troas, Neapolis, Philippi, Thessalonike, Berea, and then this is Athens down here, where you can see the Acropolis at Athens. Really, really cool mosaic floor. So when we do a new building, if there's anybody that has the time to do piece by piece a mosaic floor, I want one of these. So I'll run that by the elders to see if... We walk into the city of Philippi, and there's a lot of excavation currently underway. This arch was massive. That's all that's left of it. But there's the theater, the Philippian theater over here. But this thing would have gone all the way over that theater. It was huge. And how they did that back then, I have no idea. Engineers today, I think, would struggle with figuring out how to make that work. Now here's the theater. A lot smaller than a lot of the other theaters that we've seen. Philippi was not a really big city. It was very influential, but it was not real big. On the way out of the theater, I noticed this post was interesting. There's a gladiator standing here on this side, and on this side is a soldier of some kind, but they're holding a victor's wreath, You notice the gladiator is reaching on this side for the wreath, and they're handing him the wreath as the gladiator who has been victorious in some gladiatorial battle that took place in the theater. This looking out over the ruins of Philippi, that would be the agora that we've talked about in a lot of cities, the center square, the city square. As you walk around, again, as in many cities, they're just trying to piece together everything that they find, all the broken pieces and everything, and so there's stuff laying everywhere. But you do see symbols throughout the city of Philippi of Christianity. I zoom that in just a little bit. You can see a cross, even a couple of crosses in a couple of different places there. And you see those images of Christianity. Some of these would have come later, 3rd, 4th century. But we obviously know the church being there in the 1st century. There again, looking at the agora. This is traditionally, this right here where these guys are standing, traditionally said to have been the jail, the Philippian jail, where the Apostle Paul and Silas were thrown in prison, put in shackles where they began to sing. And then an earthquake shook everything. Their shackles came loose. The gates opened up. The Philippian jailer, thinking that everybody had escaped, drew his sword, was about to kill himself because he knew if, as a Roman soldier, if you let prisoners escape, it's the death sentence anyway. So he was just going to take care of himself. Paul yells out to him and says, "Don't harm yourself." And then ultimately preached the gospel to the Philippian jailer. The Philippian jailer and his household are baptized that very night, and he takes them, it says in the text, takes them up into his house, which was very common for a jail to be on the bottom floor or maybe even underground, and then for the jailer's home to be on top of that. And so in Scripture, when it says that they brought them up into his home, it makes sense historically. That's one of the reasons why most scholars and our guide definitely did not believe that this was the original jail. One is because it was only a one-story building. That was part of the problem. And there are 3 or 4 other reasons why our guide shared with us he did not believe that this could be the jail. He was very adamant as there's no way this could have been the jail. And there are a lot of scholars that agree. What they believe now, although, is that the location of the jail is in this picture. This right here is the magistrate's building. This is basically the courthouse. So when someone was put on trial, this would have been the building that they would have been taken to. In almost every Roman city, the jail is connected to this building. And so that's one of the reasons why I say, why would the jail be way over here on the other side when that's just not normal? So our guide believes this unexcavated area right here, that's this hill right here, and if you notice, it's quite a large mound compared to even down here, which could indicate a 2-story type of building. But he believes that if this is ever excavated, they will find the ancient Philippian jail. And so that's assumption. They don't know that for sure because they haven't ever excavated there. But I believe there is a push to try to get them to do that. And so most likely, according to the way these are usually set up, this location here would be, this definitely would be the location where the Apostle Paul and Silas would have been taken when they were charged with whatever they were charged with. And then very likely this being the jail where the earthquake and the miracle of God releasing them from prison. Either way, it's somewhere in that picture. You just think of that event, of that miracle that took place, and it happened right there in that place. This would have been the piece that was up on top of that building, the courthouse building, And you can't read all of it because I didn't get all of it here, but this says province of Macedonia, and you can even read that right there. The city of Philippi. And that, to give you scale, the top of that was up at least to my hip. It's a massive piece of marble. Again, temples in the agora everywhere. As you walk to the far side of the city, this is the, I guess, famous, I'd never heard of it before. It's the octagonal church building that was built in the 4th century, so about 330, 340 AD. And so this would have been in the time of Constantine, right after Christianity was legalized in the Roman Empire. And again, the mosaics of the floors are incredible. What's interesting, in one corner, they left a tribute to one of the bishops, one of the elders of the church. And so in all of that Greek squiggly, I can't tell what's what, but his name is written there. And I thought that's kind of neat. Have the name of an elder of the Lord's church. This is 300s. This is before a lot of the changes that began to lead toward the Roman Catholic Church began to take place. So still fairly early on, and so it was kind of a neat thing to see. As we're walking around, he pointed out that back here, you see it's chained off there, but there's also a chain here where I'm not able to get any closer. That's the baptistry. And since I couldn't get any closer, I took a picture of the sign. And so that's what it looks like, that baptistry. And so I'm going to put in for one of those, new building too, whenever we. And from that point on then, guess where we went next? Thessaloniki. And so I'm going to pick up there next week. As we go through and we see all of these places the Apostle Paul went, and tonight I wanted to connect it with the text. And so we see where in the Acts chapter 16 the Apostle Paul was going, the names of the cities and everything. And again, for me, and I hope for you, it just solidifies that it's not just a storybook. It's history, and it's accurate, and it's amazing to be able to see all of those locations with your own eyes. So we will pick up in Thessaloniki next week.